Welcome, foolish readers, to a spooky edition of Shit We've Read, brought to you by the creeps at Oblivion Geeks and the ghouls at Bilo Network. Hello and welcome to Shit We've Read, a sci-fi fantasy book podcast hosted by two friends. This is a very special episode because to get us ready for the spooky season, we are doing a special two-part Minisode series where we're reviewing a spooky graphic novel.
Yay!
That graphic novel will be the plot, part 1 and part 2. However, we're focusing on just part 1 for this episode. And joining me to review this graphic novel is the creepy Laura Benson. Hey, Laura, how's it going?
Good. Wow. I didn't know I was creepy.
Yeah, I mean, for spooky season, everybody's creepy.
That's a good point. Good point.
So I am really excited to get into this episode for two reasons. One, you know this. I love Halloween. I love spooky things. So this is getting me even more excited for Halloween, which by the time we're recording this is a little over a month and a half away. However, in my heart, Halloween starts September 1st.
Yeah, I think most people think that. Believe they celebrate that. Yeah.
Correct. And if you do not believe that, you're wrong. The second reason I'm excited for this is because this is our first graphic novel we're reviewing.
Yeah, I'm excited. We've been trying to fit graphic novels in from the very beginning.
Yeah. Anybody who knows our origin story knows, obviously, that comic books and graphic novels play a big part in that. And so from day one, graphic novels are definitely part of the plan. And finally, the stars aligned, and here we are.
Yeah. And I'm excited, too. Like, I don't generally do a lot of horror, scary stuff. But I am very excited to be getting into this with you to at least start out. Yeah.
Cool. I mean, I was going to ask you what your history is with horror comics or books in general, but you already answered that. So a little more information about this graphic novel we will be reading. As I mentioned, it is called The Plot Part 1. It is the first trade paperback of a series published by Vault Comics / Nightfall. Nightfall, I believe, is their horror imprint. It is written by Tim Daniel and Michael Moreci, drawn by Joshua Hixson, and it is a horror fantasy graphic novel. Laura, do you want to do us a favor and read the Goodreads synopsis?
I can do that. All right. In order to receive, first you must give. When Chase Blaine's estranged brother and sister-in-law are murdered, he becomes guardian to Mackenzie and Zach, the niece and nephew he hardly knows. Seeking stability for the children, Chase moves his newly formed family to his ancestral home in Cape Augusta, which overlooks a deep, black bogland teeming with family secrets. Mixing the chilling atmosphere of The Haunting of Hill House with the gripping terror of The Conjuring, the plot is your next horror addiction.
Ooh, next
Spooky.
Horror addiction. All right, some big claims there. Now, before we get into anything too spoilery, I just want to know your first reactions. What'd you think of this?
I like it so far.
Okay.
Totally honest. I seriously did not really actually read the synopsis before I read this.
Oh, you went in blind.
I went in totally, almost completely blind. I mean, I knew of this comic from when we had the comic shop, but I hadn't read it. So I wasn't really sure what to expect, based just on the cover, which for anybody who has seen the cover, I did kind of get that maybe there was something to do with a scary swamp of some sort. But that was all that I kind of got from it. But I really like it so far. It starts out with a decent amount of mystery to it, just enough to tease you and get you interested from the very beginning. I didn't really know what to expect because I don't really know what to expect for horror.
Okay.
So I was like, I guess anything's going to happen reading this. but I do like it.
Now, reviewing graphic novels is slightly different from regular novels because we have the addition of artwork. What were your first impressions of the artwork itself?
I liked it. I was a little worried for like the darker panels because, you know, when it's darker, you can't always tell what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, I did also actually read a physical graphic novel versus on a screen. Because I know sometimes, depending on your screen levels, definitely can't see all the details. But I do have the physical book, and I did really like it. You can get a lot. You can understand a lot of the emotion, or you can understand a lot of the emotion that is being portrayed for each one of these characters. And the scarier panels are definitely kind of like gave me some chills sometimes.
All right. All right. Mission
Kind of like
accomplished.
my lovely background on the Zoom call.
Yeah, if you haven't yet, go check out our Instagram. We'll post a screenshot of our Zoom backgrounds, and this one that Laura is using is staring into my soul in not a great way.
What about you?
Story wise, it was okay. It was a bit slow for me. It is a two-parter, and so I'm hoping that the second part will pick up pace. It definitely kind of leaves you right in the middle of like the mystery kind of coming in. I'm trying not to compare it to other books, but for me right away, it seems very much like another horror graphic novel I've read, which I think was slightly better. And so right away, it's just like, this is kind of reminiscent of that. And I
Been
feel
there,
like I've
done
already,
that
yeah. So
kind of thing.
So yeah, which isn't fair to it, but it is what it is. In terms of the art, I really enjoyed the art. It's simple, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I think this is very simple artwork, but I think it works for the story because it kind of has more of like an old school feel. The story, this isn't a spoiler, it says right away, it takes place 1974. And overall, the story just kind of has like gothic vibes. So the simpler artwork, I think, really works for that. But to your point, it's kind of dark. And so when you get to, I mean, like literally, like visually dark. So when you get to some of the even darker scenes, it gets very dark. And sometimes the simplicity of it made me question exactly what I was saying. Like there was a couple parts, like, am I looking at blood? Am I looking at like this weird
point.
like goop? Is it ichor? I can't really tell because it's all kind of this black. So that's the only kind of question I had about the artwork. But overall, it's a good start. I'm excited for it. Even if I have read something similar to this, I'm still totally down for horror stuff, especially during this time of year, which is really the only time I read horror. I only really read horror during Halloween season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good so far.
Should we hop into spoilers?
Let's do it. Let's just get right into the spoilers.
All right. Spoiler zone, y'all.
Yeah. Right away, I thought there was something that happened very early in the book that's like, oh no, Laura is not going to like this. And it ended up not being quite what I thought it was.
What?
Okay. So very early on, we were introduced to the character James and his wife.
Right.
And they are murdered.
Right.
Within like the first 10 pages.
Yes.
But the wife is murdered first. The wife is attacked and thrown out the window, and she's dead. And right away, I was like, oh, is this like a woman in the fridge kind of scenario? Like, is her death going to push his story forward? He's like, oh, Laura's going to bring this up. Like, I made a note of it. But then the guy dies too. It's like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah, they both died.
Equal opportunity murderings. It's fine.
Yeah. Fridging is a recent topic we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But I see what you mean. Yeah, but they did end up both dying.
Yeah.
I think maybe that was. So I said that it very quickly kind of got me interested, but I think it was really just. I think it was technically when they died that I was like, okay, what's this thing? So yeah, it's some weird gigantic monster that appears in the house and
Kind of
slings
looks
them
like
out the window.
kind of looks like a skeletal swamp thing. For people who
Yeah.
haven't read this yet, like
Yeah.
this thing swamp thing, but a little more skeletal and creepy.
If I can tell correctly from the artwork, it has what looks like a noose around its neck.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
And then it got weird because it kissed the father.
Yeah.
What's his name? Charles.
Charles.
And I was like, what? And like the eye on this monster is like wide open during this kiss. And I was like, this is creepier than somehow a lot creepier than I thought.
Yeah. So the overall story so far is so we're introduced to Charles, who's one of two brothers that we're introduced to. He has a wife. Charles owns a pharmaceutical company that was it started by his father, or did his father run it before him? I forget how many generations back it goes, but it's a pharmaceutical company that the family has owned for a little bit. And they're murdered right away by this monster. The couple has two kids, Mackenzie and what was the boy's name? Zach.
Zach.
Yeah, so Mackenzie looks like a teenager. Zach looks to be maybe about 10 or something like that. They end up going to live with Charles's brother, Chase.
Mm-hmm.
And Chase is kind of, how do you put this? Like, he doesn't have his shit together. Like, he's still figuring out who he is.
Yeah.
And so the kids go live with him, and the sheriff in town is not happy that Chase and the kids are returning back to their ancestral homeland because I guess the family is always surrounded by
they're
shit.
they're very well known for being trouble is basically what the sheriff said.
Yeah.
Wants them to leave. Literally says you can't stay here.
Yeah, like burn the house, demolish it. I don't care. Just get out of here. But he's trying to do right by his brother and trying to raise these kids in their family home. That's definitely needs some work. Trying to fix it up. And then, of course, in all these gothic kind of spooky stories, there's some shit going on with the house. There's some weird stuff. There's some visions. We think they're visions. Maybe they're actually happening. There's literal skeletons in the closet.
Yep.
There's a lot going on. Nothing's really answered. People
don't believe them.
Right. And then Chase's, I guess, ex-girlfriend from when they were teenagers. What was her name? Reese.
Yeah.
She's a family
pops
friend.
Up out of nowhere.
Yeah. She has like these visions. No one believes her. No one believes that she has these visions, but she happens to know I need to go to the house because the boy is drowning. So she shows up right in time to save him from drowning. She has these visions of like these tapes that are stuck in the wall, but no one's believing her. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on in this world.
Yeah, it's like this character Reese, like seems to be the only one that has like a direct connection to all this weird stuff that's going on, because like Chase, I get the feeling like he knows weird stuff is happening, but he doesn't necessarily really believe in any of it. But he's the one that like lived there. But she's the one that's seeing these things and knowing these things and showing up at weird times and stuff. So I thought that was kind of weird. And I am very interested to learn more about what happened with her.
Mm-hmm. I think the payoff is really going to determine whether I like this or not. So like I
said,
it starts a little slow. It introduces all these questions and nothing's really resolved in the 5 issues that were in this trade. And like I mentioned earlier, it reminded me a lot of Lock and Key. So if anybody's read that graphic novel or watched the Netflix show, the premise of Lock and Key is the father of a family dies. The kids, along with the mother, but they go to live back in their ancestral home with their brother who's taking care of it. And then a lot of spooky stuff starts happening. And so it's like almost the exact same premise. And so I'm really waiting to see how this stands apart from that story.
So I've only watched the Lock and Key show. I haven't read the comics. Mm-hmm. I would like to eventually. But I feel like this If Lock and Key is somewhat accurate, I feel like this graphic novel, the plot, might lean more towards actual monsters and whatnot. Whereas I think Lock and Key was more like kind of magical.
Yeah,
If
Lock
I'm
and Key
remembering correctly.
was more, I guess, fantasy. Yeah,
Yeah. But I see where you're making that connection between the two based on the
yeah.
TV
Just
show.
like this, just the setup. Just like okay,
Yeah.
I've been in this kind of setup before. Now let's see what you do that makes it different.
Now that you say it, it did seem a little slow at times. I feel like maybe if this were going to be more than the 2 volumes, having some of those slow moments might be a better payoff in the long run, because it kind of maybe helps understand the characters more or understand the setting more or whatnot. But being only 2, I feel like the story probably could have gone a little bit quicker.
A little bit, yeah.
So this was in the 1970s?
Yeah, 1974 takes place, which raises the question. I don't know anything about the second part. I haven't looked into it at all.
Right.
But is it saying specifically this one takes place in 1974 because we're going to have a time jump in the second part? Or is it just saying this entire story takes place in the 70s?
I mean, I hope it doesn't have a time jump. I feel like there's unsolved stuff in this volume, but I
feel like it's going to have a time jump. I feel like
maybe
they make such a big fuss to say it's 1974 that it has to be a time jump. Normally, you would just kind of include it in the script somewhere. Like May 1974. Okay, it's in the 70s. We got it.
I do like just pointing out, I do like that there is a tiny bit of diversity in this, and that the 2 kids are supposed to be half Chinese, which personally I thought was pretty cool because I am also half Chinese.
I felt like you might like that.
And I just thought it was interesting too, that they acknowledge some of the racial issues that they were having back then. Like when Chase was in the bar and somebody said something racist about the kids. Just acknowledging that they had struggles that they were enduring beyond just their weird house shit. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe that also is contributing to Chase's emotional state through this story. Because, you said that he is not exactly put together. He's got some emotional stuff he's got to deal with. Yeah. So suddenly he's got 2 kids and, he's got a lot of stuff to deal with around them. It's probably definitely making it harder for him to figure out what to do in certain situations.
I do really like Chase as a character. He knows, he's kind of the slacker brother, but he really does want to do right by the kids, and you can tell that he's making decisions based on, what the kids need, and he thinks coming back to this home, even though it's a fixer upper and it has a lot of work that needs to get done, he really believes that maybe being here is best for the kids. It's a fresh start. It gives us something to do together because he hasn't really been around for the kids. I think they mentioned they've met him 3 times. And so he wants to be a better uncle and father figure. And referring to the scene that you mentioned at the bar when there's these racists basically, giving him shit for having half Chinese, niece and nephew. He stands up and he punches them, and it says that, I'm not going to say the word, but it says they're commie cheat, and it cuts off, and he punches them. And you can imagine what the word is. And he says it's pronounced American, you illiterate hick. And so he's standing up for them. So I like him a lot. And same thing with Reese, his I guess, ex-girlfriend who's around. She's also a really good character.
Yeah. Like they're not, obviously they're not together. They've not been together since I think it was high school. Yeah. But it shows them throughout this book, both trying to help take care of the kids. And she's a school teacher, so she sees them in school. And then like there's some panels where it shows that She was watching the kids, and they all three fell asleep on the couch, overlooking their land. And then later, I thought it was really cute. It was at night, and Zach wasn't able to sleep, and he went to Chase's room. And then Mackenzie went, and they both, they all just laid there together and talked, and had like a mini heart to heart kind of conversation. It was really, really cute, and actually, showed that he's really trying to make more of an actual connection with the kids versus just taking care of them, getting them to school, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it did show that he was more than what we probably expected at the beginning of the story.
Mm-hmm. It really goes a long way, like to show people the effort you're putting in, right?
Yeah.
We're no one's perfect. You don't always have to have the answers, but as long as it's clear that you're putting in the effort because you care, I think that goes a long way. And I think the kids in the story are responding to that, especially having just lost both their parents.
Yeah, and I feel also too. So Zach is 99% mute.
Something like that, yeah.
Because he does whisper to the dog.
Yeah.
Or we don't know if he's actually talking English, but he is whispering to the dog. And then he did yell at one point towards the beginning, but he doesn't really talk other than that. But with Mackenzie being a teenager, typical teenager attitude, sass and stuff. She's very sarcastic with her uncle through like the whole thing. But it was nice to see her be able to have more of a conversation with him. And then in the end, towards the end, when he's going up to check the attic, which by the way, like, don't ever do that. She was like she felt comfortable enough to show her emotion, to show that she was scared for them and for him, and like telling him not to go up there. Which I think if something like that had happened earlier, she may not have acted that way if she didn't have that connection with her uncle yet.
Yeah. One of my favorite panels that really shows kind of Mackenzie as a character is when she's first introduced to Reese. And so she asks, "So what's the deal with you two? You doing it or something?" So,
I laughed.
Just straight to the point. No filter on Mackenzie. You
might as well.
And then, of course, her uncle Chase is like, "Oh, no." And Reese is a little more like, "Oh, well, he used to."
Well, she said kind of, didn't she?
I think she said like, kind of, we used to. It says kind of used to. So like maybe they kind of do now occasionally, but they probably used to more often. Like they used to be a thing. Now it's just kind of maybe friends with benefits kind of thing, or when they're lonely, who knows. But the relationship's definitely complicated, as Facebook would say.
Yes, it is very complicated. Which there were a few things that I was a little, like you mentioned, there were things you were confused about. I was too. I was a little confused about the timeline sometimes. And then like with Reese, she said kind of used to, but then when it does the flashback to when they were teenagers, she had like wandered off, or like kind of wanted like luring him away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he was like gonna go and follow her, but ended up not happening. They did not sleep together. Let's just say it. They did not sleep together. Something else happened. But I thought like it sounded like after whatever this incident was, they just like weren't really friends anymore. So that's why I was a little confused about Reese's response about whether they had been sleeping together or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely doesn't mean they haven't at all after that. Like you just said, maybe they just see each other once in a while, but it made me think that they were interested in each other, but never actually went beyond that because of their stupid house property.
Don't you just hate when the house is a cock block?
Damn it, house!
Like, bro, come on.
Cock blocking.
Speaking of the house, one of my biggest gripes with these kind of stories is something's weird with the house, right? Stuff just is not adding up. People just leave the house, man. Like every single horror story ever where stuff is going down, just leave.
Yeah.
Trust me, the first sign of anything creeping around these walls of mine, or I see a creature in the shadow, I'm out.
Gone.
Nope.
Leave.
I don't need to stay here. I can stay with my mom. I can stay with a friend. Out.
Yeah, I would leave.
And yeah.
I mean, you could try and do something to get rid of whatever's happening in your house, but there's no guarantee they're not going to come back. True.
You call the Winchester boys.
Yes. If you do that, please let me know. I wanted to point out, after the parents die, nobody ever refers to their mom. This funeral service is for their dad.
Mm-hmm.
I think they only mention their mom like once after this. Like everybody's only talking about their dad. And I feel really bad for the mom because nobody cares. Just saying. I was like, wait, did mom not die then? No, she's not there. Dead. That's why she's with her. That's why they're with their uncle. Why is nobody trying to remember their mom?
Well, it's about the Blaine family. She's just a family by marriage, so.
And then I thought towards the end when Chase was going into the hospital, whatever that place was, I thought he was like going to see the mom. Like maybe that's why he has the kids. Maybe their mom was just so badly hurt that she can't, like she's not really there anymore. But that was wrong because that ended up being his own mom.
Mm-hmm. Now that you pointed out, everything really is about the dad, Charles. Even like the one time they kind of point out a personality trait about one of the kids, she takes after the dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mackenzie, I forgot what the trait is, but yeah, just like you. It's like, yeah, everything's all about the dad. It's not like they didn't really get anything from the mom other than being half Chinese.
I think there is at one point in one of the panels that shows like a ghostly figure or whatever. I think one of those is the mom. Because I think the outfit was what she had worn in the beginning. But I don't remember where that was. Because that was one thing that I was trying to pay attention to was what they looked like in certain situations. Because we know at one point Charles does actually show up and talks to, or tries to talk to Chase.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks it's a dream, but I think it probably really happened because there's stuff on the floor from it. But I was paying attention to what they looked like because I was like, I wonder if mom is going to show up at some point. But yeah, I can't remember where that was.
We got a whole second part to talk about the mom. Don't even worry about it. They're gonna go into her backstory. They're gonna really kind of. So? No, probably not. But it might.
Well, no, I think obviously we know that this is about the Blaine family, mm-hmm. specifically by blood. So right. I mean, it would make sense if she's not really part of this afterwards. But it still would have been nice for them to acknowledge more that they lost both of their parents.
Yeah.
And it's not just about dad.
No, that's fair. It's definitely fair. One thing I wanted to point out that I liked about the story early on, when Charles is giving his speech and his wife's by his side, one of the things he says in his speech that I really liked, he says, we're giving credence to the idea that mental illness can be as genetic mm-hmm. as the shape of our eyes or the color of our hair. And it's really like the fact that it's really addressing that mental illness is real. It's not made up. It's a real thing that people deal with. And it's nice to just kind of see it addressed as like, yeah, it's just as genetic as anything else. Just because it's not, because usually there aren't any visual markers for it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I just thought that was really nice.
That's a good point. I wanted to ask you, actually, on that same page at the end of that speech there, at the end of that page, the last panel, he's looking down like, I don't know, terrified and can't get through the next sentence of his speech. And so his wife steps in and kind of like finishes it up for him. And then he says that and then it cuts to him calling the house, and Chase doesn't answer the phone and says that he knows Chase is at the house. What do you think that means? Does he have a connection to the house where he knows? Like in that panel, is he like realizing that Chase is there?
I didn't take it so literally that he actually knew the brother was there. Reading it, I didn't really understand it. But after going through the first volume, my assumption is that they keep hinting that the dad, Charles's dad, Chase's dad, so the kid's grandfather, had his own mental illness, his own demons. Just saying, they don't really say what they are, just something. And then later in the story, we see that there's some sort of pickled body hidden behind a wall. I feel like Charles, at the very least, knows what happened. Maybe the father murdered somebody. Maybe the father, was complicit in hiding something. So I think Charles knows, being the older brother, he's the one that knows. So I think when he's in that speech, when he's talking about his past and, just looking to the past, that memory kind of came up and kind of spooked him for a second. And then I think he just happens to know that his brother's probably at the house. Like, he just wants to check in with his brother. So I didn't take it as anything too literal of he literally knows his brother's there. But I don't know, because then his brother, the phone's ringing, his brother rips the phone off the wall, which seems like a great overreaction for no reason.
Yeah, a little dramatic.
So there's something going on that we don't know, and maybe that's something that'll be revealed in the second part. Again, a lot was kind of hinted at, and nothing was really answered, and it got kind of frustrating. Okay,
I have one more question.
Okay.
I remember I don't know too much about horror, so this is interesting stuff, new stuff for me. Spoiler, somebody kills the sheriff. It's Reese, but maybe not Reese.
Yeah, she looks possessed, maybe, or under in a trance or something.
It's very confusing for me. I mean, this is making it more interesting for sure. Like, it's her, but yeah, it looks like she doesn't know what she's doing. But at the same time, like, when she kind of starts looking like herself again, she like looks upset, maybe. I don't know how to explain it. I'm also thinking back to when she saved Zach from the bog. The hand that pulled her out was not her, or pulled him out was not her. So I'm wondering if she is like always possessed, like or there's some kind of other being that she's sharing this body with. Maybe that's why she's having these visions and whatnot.
So here's my theory of what I think happened in the story. They show that flashback where Reese was in the bog. She got pulled down. She was kissed by this swamp thing monster.
So was the sheriff. When Reese kind of pushes him into the water. Yeah, my bad. I said killed, but we don't know if he died.
And then also Charles, when he was murdered in the beginning of the story, he was also kissed by this monster thing. I think this monster, whatever it is in the bog, when it kisses you, can basically get into your mind and has either some control over you, or you're connected to, maybe at the very least you're connected to it. I think Charles was trying to run away from that. I think either Charles and or Charles's father were dealing with this bog monster, which is what Charles maybe was thinking of when he was referring to his pastor in his speech. I think the reason Reese knew that Zach was in danger was because they're at the bog. She has a connection to this monster. I think she knows, I need to save Zach from this monster.
She knows it was going to happen.
Yeah, she knows it was going to happen, so she's rushing there to save Zach from the monster. Later on, though, I think the drive of the monster to have Reese do this was so strong that she ends up helping to murder the sheriff, because she says, like, Magnus, I tried. I think she's saying, I tried to fight it. But ultimately, I couldn't. I had to give in. It controlled me. I needed to feed it. I think it's a cycle. So I think, and so I'm assuming in part 2, we'll see the sheriff again. But the sheriff will also be either under its control or influenced by it or something.
Yeah, I think whatever's happening around this property, I think it has, obviously it's got to do with the bog. Also, just thinking back to the tapes that they listened to that had, was it Chase's dad's voice?
Mm-hmm.
Saying...
Or I think it was Chase's grandfather.
Grandfather?
Yeah.
Something to do with harvesting the peat from the bog. My God, what have I done? That kind of thing. So yeah, I think whatever's going on is definitely originating there.
Yeah, and I think it's all going to tie back to that, the family kind of saying that was taught to the in order to receive, first you must give. I'm going to assume that's pretty literal, that the monster, you have to give a part of yourself to the monster in order to receive something. And I don't know what that receiving is. Maybe the Blaine family, in order to get all this wealth and success, maybe they got it from the monster, but they have to give part of themselves up. Who knows? But I'm positive that line's going to come back in a very literal way.
But it does show that this has happened through their generations. It looks like specifically the men have had mysterious, gruesome deaths throughout the last 100 years or something like that. So poor Charles wasn't even home, and it still got him.
I know.
Bummer.
Well, yeah. Don't go kissing swamp monsters.
It's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
It's good advice, Jason. Thank you.
You're welcome. Remember here, kids, shit we've read says don't go kissing swamp monsters.
We should make that our quote for this episode.
Yeah. So, what would you rate this?
I would say maybe a 3.5.
Okay.
I enjoyed it, but it wasn't as fascinating as I was hoping. Or as scary as I was hoping. But I still liked it.
Yeah, I'd give it about a 3 out of 5. And I followed your lead this time. I didn't rate it on Goodreads yet. I was like, I'm going to wait until we discuss it, although I knew I was going to give it a 3. But I was like, maybe you should talk me out of it. But no, it's about a 3.
Yeah.
It's solid enough. It's not bad. It's just kind of like, okay, the second part's going to make or break it for me.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I agree with that. There's even some books out there where I'm like, it was okay. I got to read the rest of it before I decide if it was good.
So currently on Goodreads, it has a average rating of 3.84, and that's out of 138 ratings. So not a whole lot on Goodreads. But 8.34 is a little higher than we'd give it.
Yeah, not too far off.
No.
Well, I'm excited to read the next one.
Yeah, me too. That's gonna come out next month. So keep an eye out for that. Well, I think that's it for this one. Laura, thanks so much for reading this with me. I'm super excited to read the second part next month and keep the spookies going.
Yeah, this will be cool.
Yeah. As always, if you want to follow along on our own social medias, you can find Laura at aka_LB on Instagram or Twitter. And you can find me at JRicochet, again, on Instagram and Twitter. And if you've read this or have any other spooky graphic novels to recommend, please let us know. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye. This episode of Shit We've Read has been an Oblivion Geeks production, hosted by Laura Benson and Jason Rico, with music by Joshua Chilton.
To join the discussion on this and all other books we've read, find us at Shit We've Read on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
For episode transcripts and more information about us, please visit shitwe'veread.com.
This podcast is part of the Bilo Network. Visit bilonetwork.com for more great geeky podcasts.
Thanks so much for listening.